Traveling through the world of cultivating immortals and becoming an elder, you can obtain a pair of immortal teachers' heavenly eyes at the beginning, which can see through countless disciples' qualifications and defects at a glance. I am a disciple with the holy rank qualification and receive a 10,000-fold return on my physical fitness. The stronger my disciple cultivates, the stronger I become. From then on, Zhang Yun embarked on a path of accepting and nurturing disciples. You have achieved a breakthrough in cultivating your disciples' cultivation from the qi refining stage and received a 100-fold return. You have reached the peak of the foundation building period. You have broken through the foundation building period and received a 1,000-fold return when cultivating your disciples' cultivation. You have reached the peak of the Golden Elixir period. You have cultivated your disciples' cultivation to break through the Golden Elixir period and receive a 10,000-fold return. You have reached the peak of the Yuan Ying period. Chapter 1. Strange Elder. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Xiandao Continent, Nanyun Prefecture. Lingxian Sect, the venue for the apprenticeship ceremony. Early in the morning, hundreds of young boys and girls gathered here. Elder Jiu, here. With a notification, a handsome young man dressed in white stepped into the room. Is this the 9 elders? How young. Fortunately handsome, I want to worship him as my teacher. Worship Hammer. Don't choose this person as your apprentice. The 9 elders of the Spirit Immortal sect, this is a famous oddity. Strange. What does it mean? Is it strange to be able to cultivate oneself to the point of becoming possessed by demons and regressing one's cultivation level? I'll go, then I really can't apprentice to this person. Listening to the voices of young boys and girls around him, Zhang Yun looked helpless. His reputation is so well known that even these new disciples who have not yet joined the sect know what a wicked predecessor. He was originally from Earth. 5 days ago, he woke up from a sudden illness and discovered that he had crossed over to the 9th elder of the Spirit Immortal sect, who had the same name as him. I was quite satisfied originally. Elder, be sure to start high. But after fusing memories, the mood suddenly becomes less wonderful. Because my predecessor, this evil thing, went crazy half a month ago when he practiced and broke his own golden pill. One night cultivation has returned from the Golden Elixir period to the Foundation period. If it's just that, at least there's still a thug in the position of an elder. I don't know who killed Qian Dao, but upon learning this news, it spread within the Spirit Immortal sect and made everyone in the sect aware. Well, at the high-level meeting of Lingxian sect yesterday, several elders jointly requested the Patriarch to dismiss him as the 9th elder. During the Foundation period, one is not worthy of being an elder in the Lingxian sect. The leader of the Lingxian sect did not agree or refuse, but instead provided a plan. 3 months later, he became the annual disciple of the Lingxian sect. At that time, all disciples under the elders of the sect will participate, and each elder will receive an annual ranking based on their achievements. If Zhang Yunrua enters the top 3, the position of elder will be retained. On the contrary, dismiss. As soon as this statement was made, no one had any objections. Because there are no disciples under Zhang Yun's command. It's hard to say whether there will be disciples participating in the disciple competition in 3 months, let alone the first 3. Zhang Yun is well aware of this. Get off to a high starting point and start with a nightmare. Helpless, can only face reality. Today happened to be the annual apprenticeship ceremony of the Spirit Immortal sect. He came with the mentality of being a dead horse and a living horse doctor, hoping to see if he could accept 2 disciples. But this situation is not very good. Seeing many boys and girls in the venue looking at him with suspicious eyes, Zhang Yun smiled bitterly and shook his head, walking onto the high platform specially built for the elders in the venue. Oh, rare guests. As soon as he walked up, a mocking laughter came to his ear. Isn't this our famous and peculiar 9 elders? We don't see you when we take in apprentices on weekdays. Why, are you available today? The person who spoke was a man in a blue robe, with a pair of triangular eyes and a very small face at first glance. This is also Zhang Yun's impression of this person. Mengzhong, the 10 elders of the Lingxian sect. This person is jealous and doesn't deal well with his predecessor. The two of them entered the Spirit Immortal sect in the same batch, both of whom were cultivation geniuses and achieved the Golden Elixir at the age of less than 30. But his predecessor was 3 months earlier than this Mengzhong. Not only that, but also suppressed the other party in all other aspects. For example, when practicing the same combat skill, the predecessor only took 1.5 years to complete, while this person took 2 years. The mission of hunting the same kind of spirit beast outside took half a month for the predecessor, but this person spent a month. One can imagine the psychological state of Mengzhong, who was already jealous and suppressed everywhere like this. After learning that Zhang Yun's golden pill was broken and his cultivation was returned to building the foundation, Mengzhong was the first to jump out. It was this guy who took the lead in proposing the dismissal of his elder position yesterday. Is it none of your business whether or not I come to accept the apprentice? Zhang Yun pouted. You. Mengzhong was a little annoyed and snorted coldly, course. Zhang Yun rolled his eyes, too lazy to pay attention to the other person, and found his position as the 9th elder to sit down. Humph, let's just enjoy the elder's time for the last time. In 3 months, you won't be eligible to sit here anymore. Mengzhong snorted coldly. He came here early this morning, expecting that Zhang Yun would also come. A new disciple who was about to join him was specially arranged in advance, and in the circle of the new disciple, Zhang Yun's glorious deeds were well promoted. He believes that as long as a group of new disciples are not foolish, they will not join Zhang Yun's sect. After Zhang Yun arrived, other elders of the Spirit Immortal sect also appeared one after another. Yeah. Not long after, a crane crow came from the distant sky. I saw a white crane over 2 meters long rushing to the venue. On the back of the crane, a middle-aged man in a purple robe stood with his hand down. It's the sect leader. The spiritual immortal sect leader is here. Is this the legendary Yuan Ying cultivator? Indeed, his temperament is extraordinary. A commotion arose in the venue. In the land of immortality, the realm of cultivators starts with refining qi, and goes on to build foundations, golden pills, elemental infants, transform gods, refine emptiness, combine, and achieve Mahayana, being able to cultivate until the primordial stage is already a leader in the field. The existence of the entire Nanyunzu at this level can be counted with both hands. The young boys and girls in the field were full of admiration. Zhang Yun couldn't help but breathe a sigh as he watched, with a hint of envy passing through his eyes. In the land of Xiandao, strength is paramount. If he is in his infancy, why worry about being deposed as an elder? Get stronger. He couldn't help but feel a longing in his heart. Suddenly, his whole head shook, as if it had triggered some resonance, only feeling the remnants of his predecessors fully integrated into his desire at this moment. It wasn't until this moment that he felt completely in control of this body. Immortal Master World, open up. At the same time, an ethereal sound suddenly sounded in my ear. Zhang Yun felt a flash of light before his eyes, and then looked around to find himself in a vast expanse of white space. In the surrounding void, there are clusters of light floating. What is the situation? Zhang Yun was confused. But soon realized something. Wait, this can't be. A traveler's benefit, right? My eyes lit up. System. Grandpa. Is anyone there? Immediately shouted several times in a row. But there was no response, only a cluster of light in the virtual space, constantly circling around him. Do you want to touch these light clusters? Zhang Yun frowned and tried to reach out to grab one of the light clusters. Buzz. Just as he caught the light ball, the entire light ball suddenly dispersed and transformed into a special energy that rushed directly into his brain. Obtain the ability, Immortal Master Tianyan. Zhang Yun's mind shook as he saw a flash of light in front of him. At the same time, the ethereal voice in his ear came back. Next time, it will be opened after the apprenticeship. And then he only felt a flash of light in front of him, and then looked around. He suddenly returned to the gathering place of the Spirit Immortal Sect's apprenticeship ceremony. The new book set sail, seeking collection and recommendation. This book is tentatively scheduled for 2 updates per day. Chapter 2. Immortal Master's Eye. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What is the situation? Zhang Yun was lost in thought. I inexplicably entered the vast expanse of white sky and only touched a cluster of light before being sent out. Did everything just now happen to him in YY? The apprenticeship ceremony is starting now. At this point, the apprenticeship ceremony in the venue had already begun. The first one, Xiaopang. I saw a young man in a blue robe walking out of the crowd below. What is this? Zhang Yun didn't pay much attention, but after a casual glance, his eyes suddenly widened. I saw a large amount of information inexplicably added in his eyes as he looked down at the young man in the green robe. Xiaopang qualification. Medium, possessing intermediate spiritual roots realm. 1 stage of refining gas cultivation technique. Lower level soul gathering heart classic combat technique. Gathering chi fist shortcomings. Firstly, the body has impure spiritual energy and excessive impurities. Secondly, long-term accumulation of chi in the right arm can cause excessive impurities and bloated meridians. Thirdly, cultivation suggestion. Dispel all your spiritual energy and practice again. Provide top-notch techniques such as chi gathering technique to assist in cultivation. Then use spiritual energy to temper your right arm for 3 months to improve bloated meridians. Zhang Yun couldn't help but wipe his eyes, but this message still appeared in his eyes. This made him involuntarily glance at the other teenagers present. Ning Chang qualification. Medium realm. 1 stage of gas refining, unstable, cultivation technique. Fragmented soul gathering heart classic battle skill. Gathering spirit palm defects. Firstly, the concentration of internal cyclones is too thin, the spiritual energy is floating, and the realm is unstable. Secondly, there are too many loopholes in the cultivation techniques, resulting in multiple small air holes in the body's cyclone. If the spiritual energy is not repaired, it will continue to dissipate. Thirdly, training suggestion. Recultivate a suitable martial arts technique, recondense the cyclone Huanglan qualification. Medium having looked at multiple people in a row, as soon as he was stared at with both eyes, corresponding information would pop out of his eyes. This. Zhang Yun was confused. But soon realized something. Wait a minute, I just caught that light ball and said I got some immortal teacher's heavenly eye. Is that what I'm referring to? Understand now, Zhang Yun is overjoyed. Golden finger. This is definitely his golden finger. Seeing through other people's information and flaws at a glance, this is used to recruit apprentices and go against the sky. The sound just now seemed to say, the next time I open it, it will be after taking in my apprentices. Does that mean that after I take in my apprentices, I can still enter that place again? Zhang Yun pondered. Just now, he just grabbed the light ball and obtained the heavenly eye ability of this immortal master. If you guessed correctly, each beam of light floating in that area may contain a special ability. If he enters and touches a ball again, it may give him a new golden finger. Thinking of this, he felt a little excited. Collect disciples. Hurry up and collect disciples to give it a try. Immediately scan the crowd of boys and girls in the venue. Sun Huang Yong qualification. Above average. Intermediate fire spirit root body. A yellow-robed boy caught Zhang Yun's attention. Attribute spiritual root body. This is not common, as long as one cultivates corresponding attribute techniques, there is a high probability of achieving the Golden Elixir in the future. This is actually a good goal. Zhang Yun touched his chin. Xiaopang, medium-grade spiritual root. Thinking to himself, the spiritual root test results of the first young man below have also come out, just like what his immortal teacher Tianyan saw. This summer, I want the 5th peak. An elder spoke up. The other elders were very tacitly silent. An elder took the initiative to speak up and accept his apprentices, either by liking them on the spot or by pre-ordering them. In general, in this situation, other elders will not argue. This can be considered an unwritten rule in the apprenticeship ceremony. As long as there are no geniuses like the top-grade spiritual roots, the new disciple of the middle-grade spiritual roots will belong to the elder who speaks first. Although Zhang Yun's predecessor confiscated his disciples, he also knew this rule in his memory. He has set his sights and is not in a hurry. Young men and girls gradually approached the venue and conducted tests on the spirit measuring column below the high platform. As soon as the hand touches this spirit pillar, it will immediately display the corresponding person's spiritual root situation. Next, Huang Yong. After more than a dozen people in a row, we finally reached the target that Zhang Yun had locked in. Huang Yong, medium-grade Lingzhen. Zhang Yun was not surprised by the test results. The attribute spirit root will not be detected before it is developed. Zhang Yun immediately spoke up, Huang Yong, I want the 9th peak. Lingxian sect has 19 peaks, with the exception of the main peak, the other 18 peaks are named from the 1st to the 18th, and each peak is managed by the corresponding elder. He is in charge of the 9th peak. After speaking, he looked forward to looking down. Huang Yong, I also want the 10th peak. But the sound coming from beside him froze his expression. Meng Zhong disdainfully glanced at him and said, during the construction period, I am not worthy of accepting disciples. Zhang Yun frowned and couldn't help but look at the elders around him. The elders around watched coldly, clearly agreeing to Meng Zhong's bad behavior. Or rather, in their eyes, Zhang Yun, who was just building the foundation, was no longer worthy of being a part of the rules. Zhang Yun felt a chill in his heart. Meng Zhong chuckled and looked down at the young man in the yellow robe, saying, Huang Yong, I am the 10 elders of the Spirit Immortal sect. Now, along with this 9 elders of the founding period, I am also interested in you. Who do you want to worship as a teacher? He deliberately emphasized the tone of the 3 words, construction period. Upon hearing this, the young man in yellow robes said without hesitation, I am willing to worship the 10 elders as my teacher. Okay, from now on, you will be my disciple of Meng Zhong. Meng Zhong smiled and looked proudly at Zhang Yun. Zhang Yun's face was gloomy. These 9 elders are actually in the period of building foundations. I thought it was hearsay before, but I didn't expect it to be true. It seems that those rumors before are also true. These 9 elders have really turned themselves into demons and fallen back in cultivation, and have been defeated. Fortunately, I heard about it beforehand. Otherwise, joining these 9 elders' ranks would ruin my life. Meng Zhong's words also triggered a murmur among the young boys and girls in the venue, and for a moment, the gaze towards Zhang Yun was filled with a sense of avoidance and distance. Zhang Yun furrowed his brow. I want to accept an apprentice in this situation, please. Detection is continuing. After several dozen people in a row. Nye Ji, inferior Lingzhen. For the first time, a non-intermediate spiritual root appeared in the spirit measuring column. A young man in a white robe standing in front of the spirit measuring pillar had a pale face. Everyone else is a mid-level spiritual root, while he is a lower level one, which means something self-evident. As expected, the elders on the high platform closed their eyes one after another. Chapter 3. Comparison. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Let's have a moment of silence. Astonished gazes converged on Zhang Yun on the high platform. Zhang Yun, you can accept this too. Are you crazy? Meng Zhong couldn't help but speak up. Zhang Yun ignored him and calmly looked down at Su Ming, would you be willing to worship me as your teacher? Su Ming woke up without hesitation and said, I am willing. Okay. From today on, you will be my disciple of Zhang Yun. Zhang Yun smiled. I object. But at this moment, the cheers of Meng Zhong beside him rang out. Zhang Yun frowned. Master, I request to cancel Zhang Yun's apprenticeship qualification. Meng Zhong looked at the leader of the Lingxian sect and said, although he is the 9th elder, Zhang Yun has never taken an apprentice and has no vision. At present, he wants to include such useless people in the sect, wasting our sect's resources. I strongly suggest cancelling his apprenticeship qualification. A useless person. Hee hee. Upon hearing these words, Zhang Yun couldn't help but laugh. What are you laughing at? Meng Zhong frowned. I laugh at your ignorance. Zhang Yun rebuked coldly, in your eyes, it's a useless person, then it's a useless person. Don't think so. In my opinion, Su Ming is not just a useless person, but also a genius. Genius. As soon as these words were spoken, not only Meng Zhong, but also everyone present was taken aback. Su Ming is a genius. Ha ha ha. As if hearing a big joke, Meng Zhong couldn't help but burst out laughing and said, Zhang Yun, I think you have become obsessed with your own cultivation and become foolish. You are such an obvious disabled spirit root useless person, do you call yourself a genius? As he spoke, Meng Zhong suddenly thought of something and smiled, well, since you think he's a genius, why not compare us? Compared to? Zhang Yun was taken aback and said, what do you want to compare? Compared to disciples, by the way, it also compares to the guidance ability that we as masters should have. Meng Zhong spoke lightly, his eyes scanning the venue before finally focusing on 2 1-meter blue stones in the martial arts practice area. Let's use these 2 stones to compare. You teach this genius disciple, and I won't bully you. Just teach me, this new disciple of the inferior spiritual root, Wanjie. We each give our own disciple some guidance. After our guidance, whose disciple can cause greater damage to the Yanwu stone, even if they win. If you win, I will admit that you are a genius and also acknowledge your eligibility to accept apprenticeship. But if you lose, you will be disqualified from accepting apprenticeship. Do you dare to compare this? Zhang Yun frowned. Why, dare not? Meng Zhong sneered, if you dare not, then admit that you have no vision and go back to the 9th peak. Why dare not? Zhang Yun spoke calmly, I just feel unfair. Unfair. Meng Zhong was taken aback. Zhang Yundao said, as you said, if I lose, I will completely lose my apprenticeship qualification. And if I win, you actually don't need to pay any price. Elder 10, don't you think you're just trying to trap a white wolf empty-handed? Meng Zhong frowned and said, so what do you want? It's simple, if I win. Zhang Yun thought for a moment and raised a finger, 10,000 spirit stones. I won, you compensate me with 10,000 spirit stones as compensation for slandering me. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole room fell silent. Elixir is a currency among cultivators in the immortal world, and it is also the most important cultivation resource. 10,000 spirit stones, this is not a small number. Even as an elder of the Spirit Immortal sect, one can only receive 2,000 spirit stones per year, which is equivalent to 5 years of worship for an elder. Zhang Yun, are you crazy about Elixir? Meng Zhong drank in a low voice. Why, dare not? Zhang Yun chuckled lightly. You. Seeing him using his own words to back and forth with him, Meng Zhong was angry, but soon snorted coldly, Zhang Yun, do you want to escape in this way? It's impossible. Today, Meng Zhong will expose your true face as a useless person. 10,000 spirit stones, I agree. Wanjie, stand out. Speak and look down. Wanjie immediately walked out below, with a confident smile on his lips. Compared to others, he may feel a bit scared. But compared to Su Ming, who is such a useless person, he still has great confidence. Meng Zhong also sneered at Zhang Yun. He just wants to use the disciple chosen by the latter himself, but stolen by him, to make the latter feel ashamed. Niaji, pick your favorite weapon from the weapon rack, and then use your best combat skills to attack that practice stone. Upon hearing this, Niaji nodded below and immediately took a long sword from the weapons rack in the venue, holding it in his hand. Master, the combat skill I want to use is called Spirit Sword Ju. Niaji walked to the martial arts practice area with a knife and began to dance a set of knife techniques. Drink. Waiting until the critical moment of the sword dance, Niaji's eyes froze and he drank heavily, slashing heavily onto a martial arts stone. Snicker accompanied by a burst of sparks, a scratch about the size of a fingernail appeared on the martial arts stone. Meng Zhong nodded slightly and began to talk confidently. Niaji, you must have seen this set of spiritual knives from a master. You used them fairly well, but the steps were a bit redundant. This spiritual knife does not pursue fancy. The few moves you danced before seemed to be laying the groundwork for the strongest knife, but in fact, they were fancy. The best way is. The first knife adapts to the strength of the hand, while the second knife accumulates force. Use your right hand to move the handle to your left hand, and then hold the handle together with both hands to cut out the third knife. As Meng Zhong spoke, he personally demonstrated with both hands. Only in this way can we make the most powerful cut. I understand now. Niaji's eyes lit up. Immediately, according to Meng Zhong's instructions, he put 1, 2, and 3 swords together in one place and made a full-force attack towards Yan Wushi. Pop. A crisp sound. I saw Yan Wushi directly chop off countless pieces of stone with this knife, and a knife cut that was as thin as an arm appeared on the Yan Wushi. Wow! A burst of exclamation arose in the venue. If the previous blow was considered a test using the Yanwu stone, then this blow is simply destroying the Yanwu stone. A few more cuts, probably the martial arts stone won't be able to hold on anymore. This power has at least doubled more than once. Many boys and girls looked at Meng Zhong's eyes and couldn't help but feel reverence. This 10 elders have 2 brushes. Meng Zhong enjoyed this kind of gaze and glanced proudly at him. Zhang Yun, it's your turn. Sigh. Zhang Yun suddenly let out a sigh. Meng Zhong was taken aback for a moment, then reacted and sneered, why, I know it's not possible. Are you going to give up? Your delusions are not mild. Zhang Yun rolled his eyes and shook his head slightly, saying, I'm just sighing. It's a pity that Niaji is under your tutelage. He's probably not able to fully unleash his strength by 50%. Sigh. 50%. Hee hee. Meng Zhong smiled angrily and looked coldly at Zhang Yun. Elder, I would like to see how you can make your useless disciples unleash their full strength. Zhang Yun didn't say much, but jumped down from the high platform and arrived at the weapons rack in the venue. Thank you for the reward from book friend 57236780. Chapter 4. You are a blind bastard. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Everyone was taken aback, not knowing what he was doing. Zhang Yun took a look at the weapon rack and picked a golden dagger before waving to Su Ming. Su Ming walked forward, his expression full of anxiety. He heard both Zhang Yun and Meng Zhong's words. Compete with Niaji. If his spiritual roots were not taken away, he wouldn't be afraid of 10,000. But right now, watching the knife marks and cracks left by Niaji on the martial arts performance stone, Su Ming felt a pang of bitterness. In his current state, not to mention such a big crack, it is difficult to cut through the scar of the knife in front of Niaji. Are you about to be dismissed as soon as you start your apprenticeship? Su Ming felt despair in his heart. Lift your head up. Suddenly, a voice came from his ear, and he instinctively looked up. Zhang Yun said, why, do you think you can't compare to that Niaji? Su Ming opened his mouth and didn't know how to answer. Fool. Zhang Yun rudely scolded and said, "What others think of you is someone else's business. If you give up on yourself, then you won't be saved." Upon hearing these words, Su Ming's spirit was shaken. Yeah, if he gave up on himself, what would be better than that? Looking towards the confident Niaji with his head held high not far away. He gritted his teeth and looked up firmly at Zhang Yun, shouting, "Master, I can match him." "Okay, then let me see your determination." Zhang Yun spoke lightly. "Puzzy." Meng Zhong couldn't help but sneer and say, "Zhang Yun, I thought you had a good idea. With a few words of encouragement, you can turn a waste into a genius." Zhang Yun glanced at the other person and rudely scolded, "Close your dog's mouth and just watch it carefully." Meng Zhong frowned and snorted coldly, "I want to see what you can do." Zhang Yun ignored it and just looked at Su Ming, "Do you believe me?" "Believe it." Su Ming nodded. "Okay." Zhang Yun said, holding the dagger, puff. Under everyone's stunned gaze, he plunged straight into Su Ming's left shoulder. Everyone was shocked. "Zhang Yun, are you crazy? What are you doing, Zhang Yun? Stop it." The leader of the Lingxian sect and all the elders were startled. In a competition, their 9 elders openly attacked their new disciples. The negative impact of this news spreading is quite significant. Master. Master. As a party involved, Su Ming was also confused and even forgot about the pain in his left shoulder for a moment. "Are you going to kill this newly worshipped master? Close your eyes and feel your own body with your heart." But the next second, he suddenly heard Zhang Yun's voice. For a moment, Su Ming was taken aback and looked at Zhang Yun's unquestionable gaze. Although his shoulder hurt, he still closed his eyes according to his words. Zhang Yun looked at it calmly, but his heart was still a bit nervous. Don't deceive him, Immortal Master Tianyan. To use a golden object to touch Su Ming's flesh and blood, stimulate the opponent's mutated red gold dragon spirit root. This is the simplest and most direct way he can think of. Understanding the body. Everyone present also heard Zhang Yun's words and furrowed their brows. Is this giving guidance? 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. 10 seconds passed, and Su Ming showed no reaction. Zhang Yun. Meng Zhong couldn't help but want to speak up. Shut up. Zhang Yun immediately scolded and interrupted. You. Meng Zhong was angry, but seeing that everyone present remained silent, he still snorted coldly and remained silent. But when half a minute passed, Su Ming's entire shoulder was stained with blood and water. Enough, Zhang Yun. The elders of the Spirit Immortal sect on the high platform couldn't resist. Although they could see that Zhang Yun's dagger was not piercing heavily, Su Ming's body was already weak. If the bleeding continued like this, he might not be able to hold on. If I really die here, the negative impact on the sect would be too great. Buzz. At this moment, Su Ming's body suddenly trembled, and a golden light appeared between the wound pierced by the golden dagger. I haven't waited for everyone to think much yet. Ong. Su Ming suddenly lifted his head and let out a roar that was almost like a dragon's roar. Originally just a little golden light, it instantly transformed into a shimmering wave of golden light carrying the mighty dragon power that swept across the entire Spirit Immortal sect. Within the vast 19 peaks of the Spirit Immortal sect, countless spiritual beasts trembled and knelt down at this moment. This is. On the high platform, the leader of the Spirit Immortal sect, stood up from his position with a shock on his face, staring fixedly at Su Ming below. What situation? The people present also reacted, looking at the golden light and the dragon power that they wanted to worship in the air, their eyes were filled with astonishment. Power. My power has returned. Su Ming opened his eyes and exclaimed in surprise. Zhang Yun smiled faintly and pointed to the nearby martial arts stone, saying, Go up. Yes, master. Su Ming was full of confidence at this moment, taking a step forward without even needing a weapon. With his right hand, he punched, and a visible golden spiritual energy swirled around his fist, directly hitting the martial arts stone. Pang! With a loud explosion, a 1-meter-long practice stone was seen, which exploded into countless pieces and scattered in all directions with this punch. The whole scene fell into a moment of silence. Everyone stared blankly at this scene, their mouths opening in an O shape. Broken. The martial arts stone is broken. This is impossible. It was still Meng Zhong's incredible voice that pulled everyone's gods back from the shock. But the look in Zhang Yun's eyes was full of surprise. What exactly is the situation? A useless person stabbed Zhang Yun with a dagger and turned into looking at Su Ming, who was shrouded in a layer of shallow golden light. His whole body was now filled with astonishing qi and blood. Everyone's eyes were filled with disbelief. The benefits for travelers, don't deceive me. The expressions of the crowd curved Zhang Yun's lips and he looked faintly at Meng Zhong on the high platform, saying, Elder 10, your disciple only left a crack, while my disciple shattered the martial arts stone. I won this competition. Cheating. You cheated. Meng Zhong also realized at this moment and couldn't help but shout and scold loudly, Su Ming has a special physique, you just helped him stimulate it. As an elder, he still has a certain insight, and can see that Su Ming's special physique has been stimulated. Cheating. Zhang Yun smiled and spoke calmly, Elder 10, I'll just ask, who used to call me a disciple one by one? I. Meng Zhong opened his mouth, feeling a bit speechless. You damn it. Zhang Yun rudely rebuked and said, you're just a blind fart. You didn't see anything before and knew you were talking nonsense. Now that you can't compete, you're starting to play tricks. I feel ashamed to be an elder like you, a shameless fart. You. Meng Zhong was greatly annoyed by the scolding, and his face turned red with anger. That's enough. The leader of the Lingxian sect couldn't bear to watch and spoke calmly, this competition is won by Elder Jiu. As soon as these words were spoken, Meng Zhong's face turned pale as death. 10,000 spirit stones, bring them. Zhang Yun walked back to the high platform and casually reached out his hand. Meng Zhong opened his mouth to say something, but feeling the gaze of those present, he gritted his teeth and took out a storage ring to throw to Zhang Yun. Zhang Yun took it and glanced at the abundant spiritual stones inside, smiling and saying, thank you very much for the gift from Elder 10. Damn it. Meng Zhong was so angry that his teeth were almost crushed, and his heart was dripping with blood. Zhang Yun's face was relaxed. Especially when I felt the different gazes that looked at him from below. The people present are not foolish. Although Zhang Yun only stabbed Su Ming with a dagger from start to finish. But just because he can see through the hidden special constitution of the latter at a glance and identify it as a genius, and find a way to stimulate it, it is enough to illustrate the problem. These 9 elders have extraordinary eyesight. Even the leader of the Spirit Immortal sect and the elders looked at Zhang Yun with surprise in their eyes. You should know that they had never noticed anything unusual about Su Ming before. Zhang Yun, how did you see it? The leader of the Lingxian sect is most curious, but also grateful in his heart. Fortunately, Zhang Yun saw it. Otherwise, if he were to let go of such a disciple with dragon spirit roots, their Spirit Immortal sect would have suffered a great loss. The look in Zhang Yun's eyes for a moment was much more pleasing. Perhaps the dismissal plan in 3 months can be reconsidered, Master, please accept my disciple's worship. At this moment, Su Ming from below greeted Zhang Yun with utmost sincerity and paid his respects. You have gained the recognition of disciple Su Ming and have successfully taken in your apprenticeship. Before Zhang Yun could think much, he heard the ethereal voice ringing in his ear, Immortal Master's world, open again. Chapter 5. Immortal Master returns body. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In a blink of an eye. Looking around again, I have once again entered the vast white world. Do I still need the approval of my disciple to come in? Zhang Yun let out a light sigh. His gaze immediately locked onto the numerous light clusters in the void. We need to do something to enhance our strength this time. Thinking about it, he looked up and shouted at the vast expanse of white sky, the voice just now, "Are you the steward of this world?" No response. Zhang Yun didn't care either and continued on his own, "I know you can hear me speak. Is there anything in these light circles that can make me stronger? It's better if it's the kind that can improve my physique first." He is currently in a fragmented state of Jindan, and his cultivation is in a continuous decline period. To become stronger, the first step is to improve his constitution. There is still no response. Zhang Yun frowned. Is it different from what he guessed? That ethereal voice lacks intelligence. Buzz. 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 Just as I was thinking about it, in the void of light in front of me, suddenly there were a few lines shining with special radiance. Zhang Yun's eyes lit up and he said, "You can indeed hear me. Which of these is most suitable for me?" Looking at these shining light clusters, I couldn't help but ask again. No response. "Okay, I'll choose for myself." Zhang Yun shrugged and picked the brightest spot, reaching out to touch it. Pang. The light cluster dissipates at a touch and turns into a large stream of energy surrounding him. Obtain the Immortal Master's return body. Will you proceed with the transformation? Immortal Master returns body. Zhang Yun's face showed confusion. Immediately, a segment of light message jumped out of the void in front of me. Immortal Master return body. Those who possess this body will form a connection with their recognized disciples. Every time the disciple cultivates and improves, the host will receive 100-fold return of cultivation. As the host continues to upgrade, this return factor will also gradually increase, up to a maximum of 10,000 times the return. My disciple's cultivation has increased, and I have received 100 times and 1,000 times the return of cultivation. Zhang Yun's eyes suddenly straightened. This physique is amazing. With this physique, as long as the disciple cultivates and upgrades, wouldn't he be able to become stronger even by lying flat? Perfect for him. Zhang Yun exclaimed directly, "Renovation. Hurry up the renovation." As soon as the cry fell, the energy surrounding him immediately surged towards him. At that moment, Zhang Yun felt as if he was in a warm ocean, with every cell on his body wrapped in warmth. Detected residual highly toxic substances in the host's body, cleaning up now. But before I could enjoy a few seconds, this warmth suddenly came to an end with the appearance of a piece of information in front of me. Residual highly toxic. Zhang Yun was stunned. Before he could think it over, he felt a chill in his body, and a large stream of energy washed through him like a stream of water. Quickly, he felt a surge of backflow, his throat bitter, and a big mouthful of black blood spewing out from his mouth. Black blood fell to the ground, making a rustling sound. Zhang Yun watched as his pupils contracted. Is there such a toxin in his body? In his fused memory, his predecessor probably did not come into contact with any highly poisonous objects. How did someone poison him? Wait a minute, my predecessor's cultivation would go berserk. Is it also because of this? Realizing some possibility, Zhang Yun narrowed his eyes. Toxin clearance completed, renovation begins. At this moment, the warm feeling enveloped again. Zhang Yun didn't continue to think deeply. At this moment, he felt every cell on his body as if it had been washed by warm seawater, and the comfort made him unable to help but cry out. After half an hour, this feeling finally faded away as he was still unsatisfied. So light. Feeling it, I only felt that the previously chaotic dantian in my lower abdomen became very clear now. The whole body was incredibly light, as if it had instantly lost dozens of pounds. Brush. Raise your hand and gently wave your fist, creating a circle of airflow in the virtual space. Has this power reached its peak during the foundation building period? Zhang Yun was surprised. After the golden pill shattered, his cultivation fell back to the triple period of foundation construction. The two major realms of qi refining and foundation building are subdivided into 1 to 10 levels, with 10 levels being the peak. At present, this power gives him a feeling that is no less than the peak period of foundation construction. Cool. He moved his body continuously, and the abundant sense of strength made him happy. Wait. But suddenly realizing something, Zhang Yun looked around in surprise at the vast expanse of white space and said, "Why am I still here?" After obtaining the Immortal Master's eye for the first time before, he was sent out directly. Now that we have finished testing and improving our physical fitness, why hasn't he been sent out? Can you touch it again? Zhang Yun's gaze once again locked on the numerous light clusters in the void. Brush. Immediately, he reached out his hand and quickly touched the nearest beam of light. No matter what the situation is, let's touch it first before we talk. Obtain the Wanjie martial arts pavilion. The light cluster dispersed, and a piece of information emerged. Before Zhang Yun could think much about it, he felt a sudden boom like earthquake shaking around. Looking ahead, a huge attic was seen rising from the ground, overflowing with sunlight. Zhang Yun was lost in thought. Shouldn't you give him a golden finger to touch the light ball? How did an attic appear? Wanjie martial arts pavilion. Looking at the 5 big characters dancing with dragons and phoenixes on the attic, Zhang Yun's expression moved and he said, "The cultivation method. Is it the golden finger for the cultivation method?" Thinking that his eyes lit up. Martial arts are great things. You should know that even for a cultivation sect like the Spirit Immortal sect, the total number of martial arts within the sect is only 100. This attic is so large, and it is also named after the 10,000 realms. The martial arts inside Golem. Thinking about it, I couldn't help but swallow my saliva. But he didn't rush in, he looked to the side. Where is the light cluster? At this glance, I was stunned. The numerous light clusters that previously floated in the surrounding void have now all disappeared. Suddenly, the back of the right hand heated up and an inexplicable mark resembling a token appeared on it. What is this? Zhang Yun was puzzled. Immortal Master Token, exclusive to the host of the Immortal Master World, Immortal Master World level. Level 2 current permissions. 1. You can obtain 3 Immortal Teacher Light groups and progress, March 3rd. 2. Freedom of entry and exit into the larger world. You can enter and exit freely by silently reciting "Enter" or "Exit" in front of the command. Note: the Immortal Master Light group will temporarily disappear. It will reappear after the Great World reaches level 3 and gain more permissions. Ascending to level 3 in the Immortal Master World requires taking in 2 disciples and cultivating at least one of them to the peak of the foundation building period. Current enrollment progress. 1/2, Foundation Building Peak Disciple Progress, 0/1. A large section of information pops up. Immortal Master's Order. Level 2. Permission. Zhang Yun looked at him and raised his eyebrows slightly. Upgrading allows you to touch more light clusters and gain more permissions, right? Take another disciple and cultivate them to the peak of the foundation building period. I looked at the upgrade conditions. It's not difficult to recruit another disciple, but it can be quite troublesome to cultivate until the peak of the foundation period. After all, not to mention anything else, his current state is only 3 times the foundation period. Although the body seems to be on par with the peak of the foundation building period in terms of strength after being transformed into an immortal teacher returning to the body, the realm is still a solid foundation building period triple. Let's take a look at the martial arts first. Zhang Yun looked ahead at the Wanjie martial arts pavilion and stepped forward to push open the entrance of the pavilion. Chapter 6. Wanjie Gongfa Pavilion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The attic door opened, and a breath of ancient books rushed in. Zhang Yun looked inside. It resembles a huge library, with rows of bookshelves lined up, on top of which are scrolls made of materials such as bamboo slips and parchment. At a glance, there were scrolls full of such techniques. Zhang Yun's eyes straightened on the spot. Sent it. With so many techniques, even if they are all ordinary middle and lower level techniques, you can still exchange them for a large amount of spirit stones. And in front of me, this is just the first layer of the 10,000 Realms Martial Arts Pavilion. There is an upward staircase ahead, and at this height, there are at least 2 or 3 more layers above it. If there are so many martial arts in each layer, Golem. Zhang Yun swallowed his saliva and his eyes were shining, as if he had seen the golden mountains and silver mountains waving to him. Buzz. Suddenly, the back of my hand heated up. Looking down, I saw a message popping out of the Immortal Master's command mark. Enter the Wanjie Gongfa Gu and obtain level 2 permission as well as the ability to match disciples' martial arts twice. Permissions. Zhang Yun is a bit unclear about why. But he didn't pay much attention and immediately walked towards the first row of bookshelves ahead. This row of bookshelves is relatively small, with only over 10 volumes of martial arts displayed on it. Zhang Yun picked up a roll and flipped through it. The wrapping seal. Superior cultivation techniques superior. Zhang Yun raised his eyebrows. Good thing. In the land of immortality, martial arts are divided into 6 levels. Lower, medium, upper, spiritual, heavenly, and sacred. Superior martial arts are already very rare in Nanyun Prefecture. Within the Spirit Immortal sect, there are only less than 10 techniques at this level. He casually reads a roll, it's top-notch. Aren't all the martial arts in the Wanjie Martial Arts Pavilion at this level? Looking at the numerous bookshelves in the attic, Zhang Yun's breathing was slightly rapid. Immediately flipping through the other techniques on the bookshelf. The Qingyuan steps. Superior cultivation techniques, the secret of the hidden sword. Superior martial arts, Xian Ba Dao Ju. Superior martial arts, it's done. It's really done. Looking at the uniform, superior, words, Zhang Yun was overjoyed. Even the worst level of cultivation can sell thousands or even tens of thousands of spirit stones in the cultivation market. If this is all, then there's no need to worry about future cultivation resources. Immediately walk towards the second row of bookshelves. But as soon as we approached, we were blocked by an invisible barrier. This is a 3-level permission bookshelf. You don't have enough permissions to access it. Zhang Yun was stunned. Permissions. What does it mean? Wait, was it just prompted by the Immortal Master's command? Do we need enough permissions to see this? Zhang Yun grinned. Wait, this second row of bookshelves all require level 3 permissions. The ones behind them won't. Suddenly, there was a sense of unease in my heart. Step closer to the bookshelf towards the back. This is a 3-level permission bookshelf. Insufficient permissions, unable to access. This is a 3rd-level permission. This is a 4th-level permission. As if confirming his conjecture, barriers blocked him in front of rows of bookshelves. Zhang Yun is going to cry. Don't play like this. Can you give him more than 10 volumes of countless martial arts techniques in such a large attic? Can we go up to the 2nd floor? At this moment, we arrived at the last row of bookshelves, facing the stairs leading to the 2nd floor of this attic. Zhang Yun tried to step forward. Going up to the 2nd floor of the attic requires level 5 permission. Looking at the light message on the barrier in front of him, Zhang Yun remained speechless for a moment. Forget it, find a way to level 3 as soon as possible. I took a deep breath. This permission is obviously linked to the level of his Immortal Master world. By elevating the world to level 3, one can expect to obtain level 3 permissions. As for now, Zhang Yun walked forward and collected all the 10 or so volumes of martial arts from the first row of bookshelves into the storage ring. Although there are no restrictions on entering and exiting the Wanjie martial arts pavilion, it is uncertain that one will not be able to enter after leaving. In any case, the martial arts that can be obtained should be obtained first. What is the matching technique for disciples? Looking at the other permission prompt on the Immortal Master's warrant, Zhang Yun was slightly puzzled and immediately spoke up, match. Buzz. As soon as the words fall, a message immediately jumps out of the mark, start matching the techniques for your disciple Su Ming. After waiting for about half a minute, the 4 words, matching completed, appeared. Snicker. The next second, the void in front of me twisted and an ancient sheepskin scroll appeared out of thin air. Zhang Yun picked it up and took a look. The 9 variations of the Golden Dragon. Ungraded technique, no hierarchy. Zhang Yun frowned, is there no level of skill? To practice this method, one needs to have a metallic dragon's spirit root on their body. This method is divided into 9 transformations, and each transformation will significantly increase their strength. The first transformation is the Golden Dragon Roar, the second transformation is the Golden Dragon Eye, the third transformation is the Golden Dragon Claw. However, when Zhang Yun saw the content of the scroll, his eyebrows gradually relaxed. Although there is no level, the content of this cultivation method is quite good, at least it is very suitable for his disciple Su Ming, who has a mutated red golden dragon spirit root. It seems to be an exclusive customization. Touching his chin, Zhang Yun looked at him and said, continue matching. Each apprentice of the host can match the technique at most once. Please come back after receiving the second disciple. Looking at the information popping up in front of him, Zhang Yun frowned. It seems like we should recruit a second disciple as soon as possible. By the way, it seems that the apprenticeship ceremony hasn't ended yet, has it? Thinking of something, he raised his right hand and tried to speak to the Immortal Master's command, come out. The sound fell, and a flash of light flashed before my eyes. Looking around, I had returned to the venue of the apprenticeship ceremony. The last one, Tian Chen. As soon as he came out, he heard a sound in his ear. Looking towards the venue, the test has reached the last young man. Tian Chen qualification. Below average, medium-grade spirit root. After glancing at the information of the young man, Zhang Yun thought for a moment but remained silent. Although the mid-level spiritual root is not too bad, he has the immortal teacher's heavenly eye, so there is no need to compromise when accepting disciples. Second disciple, let's look for it later. With such thoughts in mind, Zhang Yun couldn't help but look at the elders around him. Previously, the physical modification test revealed severe toxicity in his body, and the most likely ones to poison him were these elders. My predecessor was a cultivation mansion, and I rarely left the Spirit Immortal sect except for tasks. And within the Spirit Immortal sect, you can come into contact with these elders. Zhang Yun glanced at Meng Zhong, who appeared to be the most suspicious. But other possibilities cannot be ruled out. Glancing at the elders, Zhang Yun was secretly vigilant. This is the end of the apprenticeship ceremony. After the last young boy finished his apprenticeship, a proclamation sounded in the venue. Zhang Yun, I'm lucky enough to have a good disciple for you. But wait, disciple Dobby, in 3 months, you won't have such an easy time. Zhang Yun was still thinking about the toxin when suddenly a cold snort came from his ear. Glancing at Meng Zhong who was speaking, Zhang Yun said calmly, I won't bother Elder 10 anymore. Humph. Meng Zhong snorted coldly and left with the disciples he had received. Zhang Yun didn't pay much attention and looked at Su Ming in the field, who was also looking at him at the moment. He smiled slightly and said, Apprentice, follow me back to the 9th peak. Yes, Master. Su Ming responded. Zhang Yun leapt down from the high platform and took Su Ming with him as he was about to leave when a voice suddenly sounded in his ear. Su Ming should be well trained. If you lack resources, you can come find me. Slightly stunned, he looked up at the leader of the Spirit Immortal sect. The latter glanced at him, didn't say much, and left by crane. Zhang Yun touched his chin. Master, this is to open a small stove for him. Well, he doesn't have many resources. If you find an opportunity, you can go visit Zhongzhu Peak. Chapter 7. The Complete Dragon Roar. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Lingxian Sect, the 9th Peak. Since Zhang Yun's passing, he has been the only one in this peak. Most of the buildings within the peak are covered in thick ash, appearing somewhat dilapidated, except for the courtyard where a medicine field is located, which is relatively clean. There is a small cave deep in this courtyard, which is Zhang Yun's usual residence. At this moment, bring your disciple Su Ming here. Inside the cave, Zhang Yun smiled and looked at Su Ming in front of him. Disciple, how do you feel about your current physical condition? Upon hearing this, Su Ming shook his fists with excitement and said, Master, I feel like I have a complete spiritual root again. Now my whole body is full of strength. Do you know why? This. Su Ming shook his head and said, I don't know. This is also something strange about him. After all, his dragon spirit root has been stripped away, and now only the residual spirit root remains. But after being stabbed by Zhang Yun with a golden dagger, he felt his strength recover to before the dragon spirit root was taken away, even more so. Zhang Yun smiled and said, This is because your second spiritual root has been activated. 2 spiritual roots. Su Ming was taken aback. In addition to the deprived dragon spirit root, there is also a second spirit root in you. Zhang Yun spoke confidently, this spiritual root is a mutated red golden dragon spiritual root, belonging to the mutated type of dragon spiritual root. The reason why I used a gold dagger to stab you before was because only by touching your flesh and blood with a gold object can this spiritual root be activated. I see. Su Ming suddenly realized. However, this method can only briefly activate your spiritual roots and will disappear after a maximum of 1 month. Ah! Upon hearing these words, Su Ming's face changed and he said, Master, wouldn't that be me in a month? Don't worry. Zhang Yun waved his hand and smiled, I will find a way to help you maintain it. Thank you very much, Master. Su Ming is grateful. But this is not a long-term solution. Zhang Yun paused for a moment and said, to fully activate your spiritual roots, you need a rare item. To obtain this item, you need strong strength. With your current abilities, it's far from enough. Upon hearing this, Su Ming gritted his teeth and said, Master, I want to become stronger. Everyone wants to become stronger, but it requires your efforts. Master, I assure you. I will do my best to cultivate and never slack off. Okay. This is the spirit that I, as a disciple of Zhang Yun, should possess. Looking at Su Ming with a serious expression on his face, Zhang Yun said, I am now teaching you a martial arts technique. Please listen carefully. Su Ming immediately perked up his ears. This skill is called the 9 transformations of the Golden Dragon. The first transformation is the Golden Dragon Roar, the second transformation is the Golden Dragon Eye, the third transformation is the Golden Dragon Claw. Listening to Zhang Yun's narration, Su Ming's face gradually showed a surprised expression. Although he had never seen those high-level martial arts, he could still hear the extraordinary nature of this technique. Master, is this Golden Dragon 9 transformations an advanced technique? After listening carefully to Zhang Yun's speech, Su Ming couldn't help but ask. What do you think? Zhang Yun asked with a mysterious expression on his face and a smile. Su Ming's expression shook. In his opinion, Zhang Yun has tacitly agreed. Advanced cultivation method. This requires reaching a spiritual level or above in order to be called advanced. This kind of cultivation method can already be used as a way to establish a sect for the cultivation of immortals. Even some cultivation sects do not have such techniques. At the moment, Zhang Yun casually taught him a skill, but it turned out to be at this level. Isn't it true that his master is a strange elder who cultivates himself to the point of becoming a waste of being possessed by demons? Think about what he has seen so far. Others thought he was useless, but Zhang Yun saw through him at first glance that he had 2 spiritual roots and even activated them for him. At the moment, I casually took out an advanced skill and taught it to him. Such a person, useless. What a joke. Thinking of those gossiping and calling Zhang Yunji strange and useless people before, he only felt angry. These guys talk nonsense without even understanding the truth. Whoever dares to say that his master is weird in the future will be in a hurry with anyone. Looking at Zhang Yun with a faint smile on his face, Su Ming became more and more respectful. My master is a true expert. Alright, let's start practicing. I'm available now, so I'll help you take a look from the side. Zhang Yun spoke up. Yes, master. Su Ming nodded and immediately sat cross-legged on a nearby piece of cattail, beginning to practice the 9 transformations of the Golden Dragon. Zhang Yun was watching as a message suddenly appeared in his eyes. Apprentice Su Ming started practicing 9 changes of the Golden Dragon, current progress. 1%. Real-time cultivation status. Zhang Yun touched his chin. As Su Ming began to make a decisive move with both hands, Zhang Yun could clearly feel that the spiritual energy from the world around him began to gather. In his eyes, the progress of Su Ming's cultivation also started to jump from 1% and quickly reached 2%, 3%, but at 5%, the jump suddenly stopped. The rhythm of absorbing spiritual energy is too slow, and the progress of the technique is stagnant. Before thinking much, a message in Zhang Yun's eyes made him slightly raise his eyebrows and immediately prompt, accelerate your pace of absorbing spiritual energy. Upon hearing these words, Su Ming's body trembled, and his hands immediately began to move quickly. The surrounding spiritual energy suddenly converged in large areas. As Su Ming accelerated his absorption of spiritual energy, the stagnant progress in Zhang Yun's eyes also jumped again. Surprisingly, it is possible to see the flaws in the steps during the cultivation process in real time. Watching this change, Zhang Yun exclaimed in his heart, this immortal master's heavenly eye is a divine tool for cultivating disciples. 8%. 9%. 10%. The first transformation cultivation is completed. The progress jumps rapidly, just as the progress reaches 10%. Buzz. A dazzling golden light suddenly appeared on Su Ming's body surface. Ong. The next second, Su Ming suddenly opened his mouth and let out a roar that seemed like a dragon's roar. With the cave as the center, it instantly resounded towards the entire range of the spirit immortal sect. Wherever the howling sound passed, countless spirit beasts of the spirit immortal sect trembled and knelt on the ground. As if on a pilgrimage, they were all kneeling in the direction of the 9th peak. What is the situation? Where is this the roar of a spirit beast? Why is my spirit cow trembling? It's in the direction of the 9th peak, what's going on there? The strange sight brought by this howl alarmed countless people within the spirit immortal sect. Zhongzhu Peak. The leader of the spirit immortal sect, who was flipping through the scroll, lifted his head and looked in surprise towards the direction of the 9th peak. Even from such a distance, it can still emit such dragon power. The constitution of this dragon spirit root is not simple. After taking a deep breath, he chuckled and said to himself, Zhang Yun, I have collected a piece of rough jade for your child. I hope you can carve it out well. The 3rd peak. Several elders of the spirit immortal sect were gathering together to drink tea when the sudden roar of the dragon startled them. Is this the 9th peak? Was it sent by the disciple who was taken by Zhang Yun? What an amazing pressure. What is the physique of Zhang Yunsho's disciple? This cloud is really lucky to receive such a genius. Upon reflection, looking towards the 9th peak, several elders showed a hint of envy and jealousy in their eyes. However, this cloud has already regressed its foundation building period. It's a bit wasteful to have such a disciple take it from him. Do you want to go talk to the sect leader together? After all, such a genius, it wouldn't be good if he was delayed. I think it's feasible. Several elders talked to each other. Let's save some effort. At this moment, a voice suddenly rang out from beside. The elders were taken aback and looked at the elegant middle-aged man sitting beside him in a white robe. Third elder, do you want to see such a genius delayed? Elegant middle-aged, also the owner of the third peak, the three elders of the spirit immortal sect. Upon hearing this, he said calmly, a few of you, when Su Ming's disciple appeared earlier, we didn't have any interest in him. If we were to show such a talent anomaly in the future, it could be said that the 9 elders' wise eyes would recognize the pearl. If we go to snatch disciples now, it won't make sense for both emotion and reason, and the sect leader won't be able to respond either. This. Several elders frowned. After finishing speaking, the 3 elders of Lingxian's sect suddenly laughed and said, actually, there's no need to worry. In 3 months, even if we don't go to grab it, this disciple will come out on his own. The elders were taken aback and quickly realized, their eyes lit up. Yes, Zhang Yun won't be able to maintain his position as an elder in 3 months. At that time, there is no need to forcibly rob, and this disciple will also become a free disciple. The 10th peak. The unlucky guy. Upon hearing the roar of the dragon, Meng Zhong looked unsightly in the direction of the 9th peak next door. He didn't understand why Zhang Yun had such good luck. How could a strange person who has never taken on an apprentice and has yet to cultivate themselves to the point of becoming possessed by demons receive such a talented disciple? After looking at the several new disciples he had received around him, especially Niaji, who had lost 10,000 spirit stones due to his inferior spiritual roots, Meng Zhong grew increasingly disgusted. Why are all his disciples like this crooked melon and cracked dates? Feeling Meng Zhong's disgust, Niaji felt uneasy in his heart, but at the same time, he couldn't help but think of something and say, Master. If you have any fart, let it go. Meng Zhong, who was feeling displeased, immediately drank coldly when he heard him speak. Niaji's body trembled, but he still said, Master, do you know the background of Su Ming? Background. Meng Zhong thought of the discussions about Su Ming at the previous grand ceremony and frowned at Niaji. What do you want to say? Niaji said cautiously, Master, if you want to deal with Su Ming and Elder Jiu, you can actually find a way to spread today's matter to the ears of the Lin family in Nanyan City. The Lin family in Nanyanqing. Meng Zhong was taken aback. Immediately thinking of something, his eyes narrowed slightly and he looked at Niaji. You have quite some ideas. Niaji-san smiled. Meng Zhong didn't say much, just looked in the direction of the 9th peak next door, and a cold smile curved around his mouth. Seeking collection, seeking recommendation. How did Chapter 8 reach the peak of the foundation period? You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The 9th peak, inside the cave. Is the noise so loud? The roaring sound of the dragon in all directions also startled Zhang Yun. Looking at Su Ming again, at this moment, his body was shrouded in a rich golden light, and there seemed to be a faint shadow of a golden dragon on his body, emitting a palpitating pressure. However, this pressure quickly dissipated, and at the same time, the golden light on Su Ming's body began to gradually dim. Zhang Yun was taken aback. The spiritual energy of the surrounding heaven and earth cannot be continuously supplied, providing spiritual stones for absorption. A prompt message popped out of the immortal master's heavenly eye in front of me. Without hesitation, he immediately took out more than 10 spirit stones from the storage ring. As soon as these more than 10 spirit stones approached Su Ming's body, they were immediately enveloped by the golden light on his body. In just an instant, the more than 10 spirit stones were absorbed completely. The dim golden light on Su Ming's body slowed down slightly, but it only lasted for less than 2 seconds before continuing to dim. Isn't it enough? Zhang Yun raised his eyebrows and pulled out dozens of spirit stones again. However, as soon as these dozens of spirit stones were handed out, they were quickly devoured by Su Mingshan and Zhou Jingguang. But this still failed to stabilize the golden light for a few seconds. and it began to continue to dim. Please continue to provide spirit stones so you can suck. Zhang Yun's mouth twitched. Continuing to dig out the spirit stone, this time I directly pulled out 500 spirit stones. He still doesn't believe it, Su Ming can still suck it all in one small refining period. I really didn't get sucked up by the golden light this time, but I just didn't get sucked up by it. 200 yuan per byte, and after the fifth flicker of golden light, 500 spirit stones are gone. Zhang Yun was dumbfounded. Is this a rock-sucking monster? 500 spiritual stones, even if absorbed by cultivators in the Golden Elixir period, would require a lot of effort. Please continue to provide spirit stones. Looking at the information popping up in front of him, Zhang Yun resisted the urge to strangle his first disciple and gritted his teeth, pulling out another 2,000 spirit stones. He doesn't believe it anymore, Su Ming can still quickly finish it. Finally, it was not quickly absorbed again. After absorbing about 1,400 spiritual stones, Su Ming's body stopped absorbing Zhou Jingguang. The light also blooms again from dimness. Ong. Only a sound of dragon chanting sounded inside the cave, and the faint golden dragon phantom on Su Ming's body suddenly solidified, transforming into a roaring golden dragon and merging into Su Ming's body. Su Ming's breath suddenly began to climb step by step. Gas refining period double. Gas refining period triple. Gas refining period quadruple. In just a few blink of an eye, it had already jumped to the fifth stage of gas refining. Ah! At this point, Su Ming suddenly opened his mouth and let out a loud shout. Click! It was as if a bottleneck had been broken through, and Su Ming's breath suddenly surged again. 6 times the refining period, 7 times the refining period. Under Zhang Yunmu's stunned gaze, Su Ming's breath rushed all the way to the 9th level of the qi refining period. In such a blink of an eye, from the first stage of gas refining to the 9th stage of gas refining. Zhang Yun's mouth widened in shock. Is this breakthrough speed like launching a rocket? Can it still be upgraded like this? But when combined with the spiritual stone that Su Ming just absorbed, it seems that it's not that difficult to understand. Your disciple Su Mingxiu has increased from 1 level of qi refining to 9 levels of qi refining, and you will receive 100-fold cultivation return. Zhang Yun was just thinking when a piece of information suddenly appeared in his mind. In the next second, I feel a tremendous surge of energy surging out of my body. Sleeping slot. Without much time to think, he quickly sat down cross-legged and began to refine his techniques. Soon 4 layers of foundation construction period. 5 layers of foundation construction period. 6 layers of foundation construction period. The peak of the construction period. Zhang Yun's breath continued to climb until he felt the strength in his body reach its limit before stopping. What? Feeling the surging spiritual energy and strength of his body, Zhang Yun was confused. What is the situation? Why did he reach the peak of his foundation period? Master. Master. Similarly, Su Ming, who had already opened his eyes, had a bewildered expression on his face. He had just opened his eyes and was delighted with his crazy breakthrough, while also looking forward to Zhang Yun's surprised and appreciative expression. As a result, when I opened my eyes, I saw Zhang Yun sitting cross-legged on the ground, his breath rubbing upwards like a rocket. In an instant, it soared triple from the construction period to the peak of the construction period. What exactly happened here? Isn't he breaking through? Why did the master also break through with it? And it looks even more exaggerated than him. Cough cough, don't worry too much. This is just a skill that I have practiced as a teacher, and it has restored my realm for a while. At this moment, Zhang Yun also realized and coughed lightly, making up a reason. Practice. Restored the realm for a while. Su Ming was stunned at the words. What do you mean? Is it that his master's cultivation has regressed completely due to intentional cultivation of his own techniques? Can recovery be achieved immediately? Thinking of this, Su Ming's gaze towards Zhang Yun couldn't help but change. Expert. His master is definitely an expert. With just this ability, it is estimated that even those big shots in the early childhood may not be able to do it. For a moment, Zhang Yun had risen to the same level as the head of the Lingxian sect in Su Ming's heart. Zhang Yun didn't know Su Ming's thoughts, so he opened the topic and asked, "Tuer, how do you feel?" Upon hearing this, Su Ming couldn't help but smile and said, "Master, your 9 transformations of the Golden Dragon are too powerful. I just practiced the first transformation, and I felt my blood boiling inside. Afterwards, my realm couldn't stop rising, even breaking through the 5 bottlenecks of my previous chi refining period, where my spiritual roots were seized before." Zhang Yun smiled lightly and said, "You have accumulated a wealth of energy. The seizure of your spiritual roots has gradually reduced your cultivation level, but the energy generated during this process has actually accumulated in your body. With the current cultivation, it erupted in one fell swoop. Consolidate your current state well and strive to break through to the peak of the refining period as soon as possible." "I understand." Su Ming nodded. "All right, go ahead. Please leave, disciple." Watching Su Ming leave the cave, Zhang Yun immediately couldn't wait to check himself. "I'm going. Is it really the peak of the foundation period?" Feeling the surging spiritual energy in his body, Zhang Yun gasped for coolness. This immortal returned to his body, it's amazing. At this speed, the recovery to the Golden Elixir period is not far away. My current strength seems to have reached the Golden Elixir stage, right? Trying to wave his fist, Zhang Yun looked at the swirling cyclone in the void and raised his eyebrows. When the immortal master returned to his body after renovating it or during the foundation building period, he felt that his strength could reach its peak compared to the foundation building period. At present, the state has reached the peak of the foundation building period, and he only feels that his current strength is no longer weaker than when his predecessor was in the Golden Elixir period in his memory. Is it the bonus of the immortal master's return body? The more you think, the more likely it is. Such a special physique often brings varying degrees of strength enhancement. Who? Taking a light breath, Zhang Yun smiled and said, "The feeling of power is really good." As he spoke, his gaze couldn't help but fall on the storage ring on his finger, and he felt a slight pain as he looked at the missing spiritual stone inside. Improvement is an improvement, but it also consumes too quickly. Su Ming's previous absorption directly consumed nearly 1/5 of the 10,000 spirit stones he had won from Mengzhong. If the absorption speed is the same in the future, this spiritual stone may not last long. It seems that I have gone to supplement the master. Zhang Yun touched his chin and looked towards the direction where Zhongzhu Peak was located. Within the Zhongzhu Peak, a certain sect leader inexplicably felt a chill on his back. Chapter 9. Get off. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 3 days have passed in a blink of an eye. The 9th peak of the Lingxian sect, inside the cave. Zhang Yun's feet were shrouded in a shallow layer of light green spiritual energy, moving back and forth in the cave, each step giving a sense of mystery. This Qingyuan step is good. After walking for half an hour, Zhang Yun's smile stopped at the corner of his mouth. In 3 days, he was not idle and roughly practiced the superior martial arts obtained from the Wanjie martial arts pavilion. The most satisfying thing is this Qinjuanbu. As a body-oriented cultivation method, learning not to mention anything else, in terms of dodging attacks and escaping speed, is definitely a significant improvement. Is Elder Jiu available? Just as I was thinking about it, a sound suddenly came from my ear that echoed up and down the entire 9th peak. With a frown, Zhang Yun looked out of the cave. As soon as he walked out, he saw a man in blue with long hair fluttering, stepping on a flying sword and flying proudly over the 9th peak. This person Zhang Yun recognizes, the second disciple of the sect leader, Mu Sheng. Looking at the other person's flying posture towards the peak, Zhang Yun's face darkened and he said, "Get down." Upon seeing Zhang Yun appear and about to speak, Mu Xing couldn't help but feel a hint of contempt at the corners of his mouth. He proudly raised his head and said, "Elder Jiu, I came on behalf of my master." "I'll let you down." Zhang Yun interrupted with a cold drink. Mu Xing didn't pay much attention and still curved his lips, saying, "Elder Jiu. I told you to roll down, didn't you hear me?" Zhang Yun drank cold again, and this time he flipped his hand and saw a flying sword fly out of the storage ring, piercing through the air and shooting directly at the opponent. Mu Xing's expression froze, and he immediately took out a long sword clang to block the flying sword. He coldly said, "Elder Jiu, how dare you attack me? Get out of here." Zhang Yun let out a loud shout and forcefully pressed down with his right hand. On the flying sword blocked by Mu Xing's long sword, a stunning spiritual energy burst out with a loud bang. Not good. Mu Xing's face changed as he didn't have time to dodge and was directly struck by the spiritual energy. He fell from the air with his sword and landed on a tree branch in front of the peak in embarrassment. "Zhang Yun, you." This made him furious and ready to roar. Brush. I only heard a sound of breaking wind coming to my ear, and the next second I had an extra palm on my shoulder. Bang! The whole body was forcefully pulled towards the ground by this palm, and fell to the ground in a dog-eating position. No one has taught you before. If it weren't for the urgent situation, there wouldn't be any loud noise or disciples flying to the top of the Elder Peak. Zhang Yun stood on the side, brushing his sleeve and robe lightly, and spoke coldly. At this moment, Mu Xing was disheveled. Upon hearing this reprimand, he was furious and shouted, "Zhang Yun, you're looking for death." With a burst of spiritual energy, he stood up and angrily punched Zhang Yun. Pop! Zhang Yun raised his hand directly and caught the punch. "Die for me." The spiritual energy on Mu Xing's fist erupted, wanting to directly fly Zhang Yun out. But after shaking for half a day, he found that his explosive fist power and spiritual energy seemed to be hitting a copper wall and iron wall, unable to shake at all. "You." Mu Xing's eyes showed a hint of astonishment. He is the peak of the foundation building period. He didn't save his strength when the spiritual energy of this punch exploded. Zhang Yun, whose cultivation level has fallen to the triple stage of foundation construction, should have been directly thrown out. Why is it now? Before I could think much about it, I felt like my fist was being clamped by a pair of pliers, instantly deformed and making a click-click sound of fracture and cracking. Mu Xing screamed in pain, his face turning red as he quickly shouted, "Let go. You go." Click. Zhang Yun, with a cold expression on his face, forcefully pinched and broke the opponent's hand bone. He lifted it and kicked it out of the opponent's stomach, saying coldly, "I thought you were the first offender. I'll spare you this time. If there's another time, I'll just give you up." Mu Xing was kicked flying heavily and collided with a huge rock next to him, feeling pain all over his body as if he had fallen apart. Upon hearing these words, he burst into anger and said, "Zhang Yun, I want to." But as soon as he spoke, he was coldly interrupted by Zhang Yun's self-assured words. "But you flew over the peak of my elder, making loud noises on my 9th peak, and now openly attacking my elder. These elders will truthfully report to the sect leader, and you wait to accept his punishment." Upon hearing the words, Mu Xing's breath of blood spurted out. This Nima is exactly what he wants to say. It's clear that he should have reported it to the sect master, okay. Without caring about the other person's thoughts, Zhang Yun regained his composure after speaking and asked calmly, "You just said you were following the order of the sect leader. Tell me, what's going on?" Upon hearing this, Mu Xing was so angry that he almost spat out another mouthful of blood. "Do you now know that I am ordered by the sect leader?" "MD, I won't say it yet." He turned his head directly. Zhang Yun didn't pay much attention to the situation and was startled to the side. At this moment, Su Ming, who was stunned, waved and said, "Disciple, come over." Su Ming was taken aback and quickly stepped forward. Go, step on his feet. Zhang Yun pointed to Mu Sheng who was lying in front of the giant stone. Ah! Su Ming was taken aback. This guy is bothering me in your cultivation, so I deserve to be trampled on. Don't worry, I'm here, don't be afraid he dares to fight back. Okay, master. Although somewhat confused, Su Ming still nodded and walked forward. Mu Sheng was furious upon seeing this and said, Zhang Yun, don't go too far. Zhang Yun ignored it. As Su Ming approached and raised his foot, he really wanted to step on him. Mu Sheng quickly shouted, Zhang Yun, master wants you to go to the sect leader peak. I have something important to talk to you about. Master, are you looking for me? Zhang Yun raised his eyebrows. Did you know that he was training his disciples to consume too much spiritual stones and wanted to send him spiritual stones? Thinking about the bright light in front of him, he quickly greeted Su Ming and said, Don't step on me, come back. Upon hearing this, Su Ming let go of his feet and glanced at Mu Sheng, feeling a bit regretful. The expression of wanting to step on it made Mu Sheng's face turn green. Didn't this new disciple hear his conversation with Zhang Yun just now? He is a disciple of the sect leader. Do you really want to step on him? Tuer, you stay behind to watch the house, and as a teacher, you can go back. Zhang Yun said to Su Ming and then looked at Mu Sheng, lead the way. Do you need him to lead the way? Mu Sheng stared blankly. Why, do you want me to carry you to Zhongzhu Peak? Zhang Yun said lightly. With a twitch of his mouth, Mu Sheng cursed, bastard, in his heart. He gritted his teeth and stood up, using his unbroken left hand to wield his sword. Zhang Yun also pulled out a flying sword to follow. Flying with a sword is not a difficult task for cultivators, they can achieve it with a foundation period of cultivation. The two of them flew all the way out of the 9th peak. Quickly flying to the front of Zhongzhu Peak, upon arriving here, Mu Sheng immediately collected his sword and landed on the mountain path below, preparing to walk up the mountain. Zhang Yun looked coldly at it. At his 9th peak, he flew his sword directly to the top of the peak. Now that he has returned to the sect leader peak, he knows how to abide by the rules. Sensing Zhang Yun's gaze, Mu Sheng's mouth twitched. His previous behavior at the 9th peak was indeed intentional. After all, an elder who has already fallen into the triple cultivation stage of the foundation building period, why should he be respected at the peak of this foundation building period? In his thoughts, Zhang Yungang didn't dare to do anything, but he didn't expect, what is the situation with this guy? Feeling the pain in his right hand, Mu Sheng was puzzled. Isn't it true that Zhang Yun has already fallen into the triple construction period? How could his newly demonstrated strength give him a feeling that is no less than that of the Golden Elixir period? Is the rumor false? Zhang Yun didn't pay much attention to Mu Sheng. At this moment, he withdrew his flying sword and walked towards the top of the sect leader peak. Wu Xiaopang, you can make mistakes in doing such small things. Do you still want to cultivate immortality? From today on, you are no longer the named disciple of this deacon. Go back and forth wherever you go. No, master. As soon as I arrived at the mountainside square of Zhongzhu Peak, there was suddenly a sound of reprimands and cries coming from ahead. Chapter 10. Wu Xiaopang. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I saw a young man with short hair, round face, and a slightly overweight figure standing in front of a middle-aged man in a Taoist robe at a loss, pleading, Master, please give me another chance. I will definitely not make any mistakes next time. Wu Xiaopang, you are no longer a disciple of my Lingxian sect. Hurry up and leave the sect, don't mess around. Master, I know it's because I haven't paid the offerings recently that you're unhappy with. But I'm really short of money lately. Can you give me some more time? Next month, I'll definitely make up for the spirit stones together. What nonsense are you talking about? The middle-aged man in Deapeo's face changed when he heard these words. Quickly looking around, He noticed that Zhang Yun and Mu Sheng had just walked up the mountain path and their faces twitched. He quickly grabbed the obese boy's hand and said, "Come with me. I want to leave immediately." "Wait a minute." But a voice suddenly sounded. The middle-aged man in the Taoist robe paused in his footsteps, and with a smile, he looked at Zhang Yun who spoke, "Jiu. Jiu elder, what's up?" Zhang Yun ignored him and his gaze was drawn to the chubby boy next to him. Wu Xiaopang qualification. Holy rank. The holy body of the overlord, not awakened, inferior and inferior spiritual roots, can transform into sacred Wang spiritual roots, realm. One stage of refining gas cultivation technique. Yonling technique, lower level technique, battle technique. Yonling fist shortcomings. Firstly, the holy rank qualification has not been developed, and the overlord holy body has not been awakened. Secondly, the cultivated techniques gather spiritual energy in the back of the neck, making it the gateway to life. Thirdly, training suggestion. Help them obtain the true chi of the overlord, activate the holy body of the overlord, and change their cultivation methods holy level qualification. The holy communion of the overlord. Zhang Yun was surprised in his heart. This is still the second disciple he has encountered who possesses such qualifications. On the side, Mu Xing saw Zhang Yun calling out to the middle-aged couple in Dao Pao and frowning slightly. He heard the conversation between the latter two, which clearly revealed that the middle-aged man in Dao Pao had received a spirit stone from a obese boy. The master collected his disciple's spirit stone, and with just a little thought, one can guess the tricks behind it. If this matter spreads, it will have a significant impact on their sect leader Peak. Elder Jiu, this matter is an internal matter of our sect leader Peak, and we will handle it ourselves. Mu Xing immediately spoke up and said in a deep voice to the middle-aged man in the Taoist robe, "Go back and wait for notification." The middle-aged man in the Taoist robe turned pale upon hearing this. I secretly cursed my poor years and was unexpectedly caught by Mu Sheng, who was a disciple of the sect leader. For a moment, I looked at Wu Xiaopang with resentment and said, "You're not my disciple anymore, go away." Master. What else does Wu Xiaopang want to say? But the middle-aged man in the Dao Pao didn't turn his head back anymore. "Leave the sect by yourself." Mu Xing spoke lightly. Wu Xiaopang's body trembled and his face turned white. Is his dream of cultivating immortality about to end at the beginning? Not many people know how hard he put in to cultivate. He, with a lower-grade spiritual root, has not been favored by people since his cultivation began. Both outsiders and family members advise him to be an ordinary person and not hold any hope for cultivation. But he is not willing. In his childhood, he was almost buried at the mouth of a demon beast in a mountain forest. At a critical moment, a cultivator dressed in shining golden armor came down and cut off the demon beast that was several meters high with a single sword. Drifting away, that scene was deeply imprinted in his mind and is still vivid in his mind until now. Since then, cultivating immortality has become his dream. For this dream, he didn't hesitate to argue with his family and run away from home. After paying all the costs, he finally obtained the Spirit Immortal sect and became a middle-aged named disciple in a Taoist robe as a deacon. I was hoping to officially embark on the path of cultivating immortality, but for half a year, the other party did not teach him anything else except a lower-level martial arts. Instead, they arranged a bunch of miscellaneous tasks for him to do every day, and also had to pay a spiritual stone every month as a tribute and tuition fee. Although there was a deviation from expectations, he remained steadfast in completing every miscellaneous task requested by the other party. He hoped to use his efforts to make the other party see and remove his registered identity. But in the end, it turned out that I couldn't pay the spirit stone on time this month. We need to expel him for a slight mistake in easily identifying his miscellaneous tasks. Wu Xiaopang clenched his lips, feeling an indescribable sense of grievance in his heart. Seeing that he didn't move, Mu Xing felt a little displeased and said, "What are you still doing? Hurry up and leave." Our sect leader peak, don't leave any outsiders behind. Upon hearing this, Wu Xiaopang's body trembled and he lowered his head with bitterness, then stepped up. Just taking a step, I felt my calves soften and my body fall forward uncontrollably. Pop. Just as he was about to fall, a strong palm supported him and said, "Your name is Wu Xiaopang, right? Are you interested in joining my 9th peak?" The gentle voice in his ear stunned Wu Xiaopang, and he looked up at Zhang Yun who was holding him by his side, feeling a bit dazed. Upon seeing this, Mu Xing frowned and said in a deep voice, "Elder Jiu, this is the internal affairs of our sect leader peak. You'd better not interfere." "Who intervened in your internal affairs?" Zhang Yun rolled his eyes and said, "I have a crush on this young man and want to take him as my disciple, can't I? Take a liking to it." Mu Xing grinned, "Who believes it?" Although Wu Xiaopang is not familiar with him, even if he is appointed as a deacon, he can only become a named disciple, and it seems that he still managed to make it through the flower spirit stone, which shows how poor his qualifications are. In his opinion, Zhang Yun's intention to accept Wu Xiaopang is likely to ask more details about Director Li's acceptance of the spirit stone from his mouth. Mu Xing said in a deep voice, "Elder Jiu, this matter concerns the reputation of our sect leader. If we really make a big fuss, our master will also be unhappy. Whatever you think." Zhang Yun was too lazy to talk to him and looked at Wu Xiaopang with a smile. "Are you interested? You should have heard of my name before. Although there were some mistakes in the cultivation process, at least there were successful experiences. Now I have one disciple under my command. If you join, you will be my second disciple. Do you want me to be your official disciple?" Wu Xiaopang's face was full of disbelief. The name of the 9 elders, he had heard of, was a strange elder who had turned himself into a demon and regressed his cultivation. But what about this? No matter how bad it is, it's still an elder. And if the other party wants to take him as their second disciple, he will be an official disciple, not a named one. Of course. Zhang Yun nodded. "Yes. I am willing to join the 9th peak." Wu Xiaopang didn't hesitate, afraid that Zhang Yun would back out. He quickly bowed to his master and said, "Master, please accept my disciple's bow." "Okay. From today on, you will be my disciple of Zhang Yun." Zhang Yun's face was full of smiles. Mu Xing frowned on the side. He has already spoken so clearly, Zhang Yun still wants to accept it. "Are you really interested in Wu Xiaopang?" He looked at Wu Xiaopang and a hint of disgust flashed through his eyes. Not to mention anything else, just the other person's physique is not what a normal cultivator should have. Generally, after cultivating spiritual energy, impurities in the body are washed away, and the body becomes symmetrical. Wu Xiaopang's figure is still so fat, and there may be some problems with his body. Such people's cultivation often becomes more difficult. "Zhang Yun, take this disciple and play." Without paying attention to Mu Xing, Zhang Yun smiled and said, "Xiaopang, I have something to deal with right now. You can go directly to the 9th peak where your senior brother is. Once I finish handling the matter, I will come back to find you." "Okay, master." Wu Xiaopang nodded and swept away the previous haze, excitedly heading towards the 9th peak. After seeing the other person off with a smile, Zhang Yun continued to walk towards the peak of the sect leader, speaking leisurely and humming a tune, feeling quite good. These 2 disciples were completely unexpected to him. Mu Xing beside him looked speechless for a moment. As for a named disciple who doesn't even accept a deacon, is he happy like this? As expected, the rumor is correct, this is just a weirdo. On the summit of the main peak, inside the magnificent main hall of the sect. When Zhang Yun arrived, he found that besides him, there were already several elders of the Spirit Immortal sect present here. This includes Meng Zhong. Upon seeing Zhang Yun arrive, Meng Zhong let out a soft snort. Zhang Yun ignored the other party and couldn't help but look at the Lingxian sect leader sitting high above the main hall, dressed in a purple robe. "Elder Jiu, take your seat." The leader of Lingxian sect said calmly. Zhang Yun nodded and casually found a seat in the main hall to sit down. Glancing at the elders in the field, I pondered in my heart. I thought the leader of the Spirit Immortal sect was looking for him alone, but I didn't expect other elders to be called as well. Judging from this posture, there is something to announce. I see that most of the elders of your sect have arrived. Spirit Immortal Taoist friends, should I also appear as a guest? Shortly after Zhang Yun arrived, a hearty laughter suddenly came from outside the main hall. Everyone was taken aback. Just outside the main hall, a strong man dressed in a black and gold robe walked in. As soon as this person walked into the main hall of the sect, the invisible aura emitted made the temperature inside the entire hall seem to drop by a few degrees. The air has become somewhat oppressive. Zhang Yun felt a slight suffocation in his breath and looked at the strong man in surprise. Yuan Ying period. This feeling has only been brought to him by the leader of the Spirit Immortal sect, who is in the Yuan Ying period. Is this black and gold-robed strong man in front of me a cultivator from the Yuan Ying period? The elders of the Spirit Immortal sect present also felt this oppression, all showing surprised expressions. Nanshan Daoyu, this is our Lingxian sect. However, soon, with a faint voice, Zhang Yun and the elders of the Lingxian sect felt their bodies light, and the sense of oppression disappeared. Lingxian Taoist friend, don't mind. Our sect is just joking with the elders of your sect. The strong man in the black golden robe smiled at the leader of the Lingxian sect, restrained his breath, and looked at Zhang Yun and other Lingxian sect elders, saying, "You elders may not have met our sect before. Our sect took office 3 years ago and is the leader of this generation of Nanshan sect.